Okay, are we ready to start, Melissa?
Yes, you can go ahead, Anna.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone, and very welcome to this webinar. My name is Anna Nilsdotter, and I'm the CEO of WaterAid Sweden. So we have organized this seminar because we want to spread knowledge about why water sanitation and hygiene is so important for society and business. Globally, 1 of 10 people lack access to water, and this is something that we at WaterAid want to change. We are a global non-governmental organization with over 40 years of experience, and our vision is to bring everyone, everywhere, access to clean water, toilets, and good hygiene. We work in close partnerships with business, governments, and with many other stakeholders. And we think that water is really the foundation of all life. We're all dependent on it for drinking, for cooking, for cleaning, and for hygiene. And we also use it to produce food and goods. So to achieve the goal of bringing everyone water and sanitation to the year of 2030, we really need to increase investments sharply. This cannot be done without working closely with business. So we would like to see the private sector to step up and see how important water is for production, for business development, and for sustainability. So today we are here to learn more about how we can work with the food, beverages, and agricultural sector. And I would like to introduce our moderator, Ruth Loftus from WaterAid UK, who works as a senior private sector advisor. Very welcome, Ruth.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, so thanks very much, Anna, for the introduction. So I will begin by taking us through some slides to explain a little bit about how we see the water issues at WaterAid. I'm going to touch on water risk firstly, then I'm going to talk a little bit more about WASH, and how WaterAid understands WASH and how we work with businesses on the WASH agenda. Then I'll touch on WaterAid's approach. Then I'll talk about WASH in agricultural supply chains and bring the WASH element to life. And then I'll finish with some case studies. As Anna said, I'm the senior private sector advisor for WaterAid. It's a global role. I work with lots of different companies all around the world, understanding how we can make those partnerships more transformative, not only transactional, apologies. And then we'll also be hearing from Kajsa-Lisa, our colleague from Löfbergs, shortly. So I will start off with my few slides I have. We can move on to the first slide. Okay, so I think all companies need to be thinking about, first of all, water risks. So every company needs to understand where their water risks are globally, to understand how they can then manage their portfolio, manage their supply chain, and understand where those risk issues might be. So some companies use the WRI aqueduct tool, which is shown here. This covers overall water risk globally. Then if we click on one more slide, then we have another overlay, and this shows where globally we lack drinking water. This is data from the UN Joint Monitoring Programme, the JMP. And then if we click on one more slide, we can see the next overlay, which shows globally where we lack sanitation. So it's no coincidence that, first of all, when we think about our global water risks, they often coincide with where there are issues with lack of drinking water and lack of sanitation. So this slide really is just to serve and highlight the point that global water risks are often overlapping with WASH water risks as well. So if we move on again, I'm now going to start unpacking this into what is WASH. So water, 1 in 10 people globally don't have sufficient water. 1 in 5 don't have decent access to a toilet. This feels pretty crazy when we're all probably sitting in our offices right now with the toilet probably very conveniently for us. But yeah, 1 in 5 don't have access to a toilet. And then 2.5 billion people don't have access to water and soap to clean their hands. Again, these are kind of basic human rights that often, as I said, we're all probably sitting on our offices now with all three of these things close at hand, but it's really stark to realise that they aren't for lots of people around the world. So if we move on to the next slide now, I just want to touch on why businesses should care about water, sanitation and hygiene issues. So as a company, we want to try and manage our WASH risks. So if I unpack this, there's three main risks, I think, for business that we need to be understanding. So there's the physical risk, the regulatory risk, and the reputational risk. So if I unpack these a little bit more, businesses and the company and the individuals that work in their supply chains need to ensure they have physical access to the taps, the toilets, and the hygiene facilities in the supply chains and in the communities where the workers are living. They have this physical access to those WASH facilities, then they'll be happier, healthier, more productive at their work. That's physical risk. Companies need to try and manage that physical risk. Regulatory risk, this is the second risk. Often when businesses are working in different local regulations or different standards or different jurisdictions, there will be regulation that's in place that companies need to try and align with. And WASH is often part of that standard. So the International Labour Organization sets global standards on WASH standards that should be in place. And to try and meet that regulation is really important. Finally, reputational risk. So if companies do a great job at this type of thing, they can enhance their social license to operate. It can be good for their brand, and therefore they probably sell more of the product and are really good reputationally and may be able to maintain their social license to operate in that country. So it doesn't have to sound too complicated. It's just about businesses managing, first of all, their water risk. And coincidentally, if they're trying to manage their water risk, they'll probably be also trying to manage their WASH risks. So on the right-hand side of the slide here, this just highlights some of the business benefits that can result from doing good WASH management. So if we think about WASH management by the companies, for the workers and in the supply chains, and also in the communities where those workers are living, it could result in increased productivity of the product that company is growing or producing, reduced absenteeism of the workforce, a more resilient supply chain, can be better reputationally and have good relationships with investors. It can also potentially result in increased brand value and consumer preference. We all know we like buying products from a brand that we know and we trust and we love, and they do good for the environment and good for people. And it also can help improve health and well-being of the staff and workers. And the staff retention piece is also very important in that puzzle as well. So this is kind of the gold star slide. This is kind of what we're all aspiring to do, but this helps us unpack why WASH is relevant to your business, which often isn't completely obvious. So just moving on to the next slide, this is a lovely visual illustration of the Sustainable Development Goals. So this was actually done for the agriculture sector, and it shows how all the SDGs are intrinsically interlinked. And it also shows how the water, sanitation and hygiene goal within SDG 6, the nice blue piece of the puzzle at the bottom of the pie here, really underpins every other SDG. So if we have good water and WASH access to people, then that will probably result in a good circular economy, in good jobs and livelihoods. It's good for our biodiversity, it's good for the environment. So it really is a knock-on effect to lots of other of the SDGs. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to talk about how WaterAid usually tries to work with companies. So if we go on to the next slide, as I said, I'm going to unpack how we do this. So the next slide shows a ladder. So this is actually some of you may be aware of water stewardship. So that is a concept that was coined by WWF. And so WaterAid has developed our own ladder, so to speak, on WASH stewardship. If a company is wanting to be a good WASH steward, they might come talk to WaterAid or any other WASH provider. But obviously I work for WaterAid, so hopefully you'll come and talk to us. But if a company is trying to be good at their WASH management, they might want to be on this journey at some point. So we start, and this ladder doesn't have to be done in sequence. It can be done at any point as we go along the journey. But it sometimes starts with awareness. So a company may be at the start of their journey of understanding what WASH even is. The business may be trying to understand where water, sanitation, hygiene intersects with their commodity or their business. So we want to try and raise awareness of that topic. And then we may be going to some of our more kind of advanced companies on the far right-hand side, where they want to be driving influence and scale. They want to be working in a country, in a river basin with other businesses, for example, to try and manage those WASH risks and water risks. So this is just a journey, and it helps us understand where a company is on that journey, where WaterAid could help that company on that journey, and what type of partnership we could develop together. And the point here to flag is that it's a very much tailor-made relationship for each company, depending upon what stage in the journey they're at. So now let's bring this to life. If we move on to the next slide, let's bring this to life and talk about how we talk about WASH in agricultural supply chains and where that's relevant to our business. And we're going to be hearing from Löfbergs shortly about how WASH is relevant to their agricultural supply chain. So a little bit of context will hopefully be helpful for you. So agriculture is the world's largest water consumer. It accounts for about 70% of annual freshwater withdrawals. We've already seen on the map that I showed you right at the beginning where WASH risks and water risks are an issue in those key geographies. And we know that projected water demands are only going to get tougher. There's going to be more competing demands from people and from the environment and from businesses for this scarce resource. So agricultural supply chains really have to play a role in helping to manage this scarce resource. We also know that agricultural supply chains often originate in countries that are already water and WASH scarce. So again, this is an issue for companies to try and manage. And the also other really interesting element about agricultural supply chains is women. So like a large part of the supply chain in agricultural supply chains are women, and they are often the ones that are disproportionately affected by insufficient access to WASH. So moving on, I've got a really lovely visual here, which hopefully helps bring this to life a little bit more. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'll talk through this visual, and this really helps illustrate where the WASH issues intersect with an agricultural supply chain. And in this picture, you can see we've got large commercial type setups and also small subsistence type setups. And it can kind of be relevant for, you know, a tea or coffee supply chain through to a barley or maize supply chain and very small subsistence scale farming too. So if we start in the top left corner, this is basically tea picking depicted here in the top left corner. We have tea pickers at high altitude, quite strenuous work, having to carry the tea or the coffee potentially round in their backs. So we recommend them taking water. The tea pickers obviously probably have to take water provision with them, so they have their water bottles with them. Moving around the corner to the top of the middle there. So this picture also depicts that for large scale farming versus small scale farming, we need to have big differences in how we consider WASH facilities and considerations. So the acreage of large scale agricultural settings is often huge acreage. So trying to manage those water, sanitation, and hygiene provisioning across large scales has to be very differently considered to small scale domestic scale subsistence farming. So again, moving on, we can see the rain cloud and the sun here. Again, this is just to highlight the idea that agricultural contexts need to consider a changing climate. We are projected to be in a increasingly changing climate, which will have impacts on water availability and WASH availability for farmers and people. Again, top right corner, I've talked about the small scale element and the considerations there, but we need to also think about the seasonality of the crops, the seasonal workers. Is it an all year round crop? Is it just a seasonal crop? Where do the workers live? Do they live in their own houses? Are they houses that are provided by the facility or the company? In plantation, for example, sometimes they're provided by the company. And who provides the WASH facilities? What is the sphere of influence of that company? Whose responsibility is it to provide taps and toilets and hygiene provisioning? Because the knock-on effect of not providing those sort of things is that it can have contamination to the groundwater, for example. You can see the river at the bottom of the diagram is a slightly contaminated brown colour at the bottom there. So if we don't manage some of these issues, it can result in contamination and further issues. And again, I'm moving to the end of the diagram explanation now, but you can see in the bottom of the picture here, we need to ensure that we have sufficient toilets that are sex segregated for men and women. We need to think about shading environments for the workers under trees, and we also need to be thinking about potable water provision for those people. So again, let's move on to the next slide now. I'm going to bring to life a project that WaterAid is currently driving. It's called the Business Case for WASH, and it really help companies understand what is the business driver for doing this sort of stuff. What is the bang for the buck, and why should businesses care? So we know that investing in water, sanitation and hygiene is a really important thing to do, but we also know that for CFOs of companies, we often want to have that business driver for why it's good to invest. So the business case for WASH is basically a methodology to understand what is the return on investment for how many dollars invested, how many dollars does it generate back to the business. So if you move on to the next slide. This shows that we've been testing this methodology in different countries around the world, in different workplace settings and in different contexts. So we have factory settings funded by HSBC in leather tanneries in India, and also Bangladesh ready-made garment factories in Bangladesh. We have it in tea gardens in Kenya, tea gardens in Darjeeling in India, with Twinings, and with Diageo farming communities. So this is a really interesting pilot study, which is trying to generate the return on investment from doing these projects. And we're getting the results this year, which is really exciting. And it will hopefully provide the business case for companies that are trying to justify internally, what is the bang for my buck? Is there a financial return on investment from doing this? And the results from this will show that there is. So I'm coming towards the end now. I'm going to just share one quick case study from Unilever. Okay, so really briefly, this is in Kenya. It's a large, it's a high altitude, big area of hectares, lots of farmers. And the good thing about this project is everybody lives on site. So it's a much more controlled environment for us to do a hand hygiene intervention. So if we move on to the next slide, I will explain what the hand hygiene intervention is about. Hand hygiene is often the forgotten brother or sister of WASH programming. It's easier, low cost. It's about hygiene behaviours. So this whole campaign was around, it was called Tuko Clean, Tuko Fiti, which in the local lingo means everybody's clean and everybody's fit. So if everybody washes their hands, it reduces wash-related illnesses, makes sure everybody is fit in the community, more tea is picked, and happier, healthier workers. So the outcomes of this project was that there is a return on investment from this project. At the end of the 2-year programme from the hygiene campaign, we actually had some really good results from increased productivity and increased efficiency across the workforce. So that brings me to the end of my formal presentation, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavour about how we do WASH programming at WaterAid and how we can bring this to life. And I would now like to introduce my colleague who's also on the line. Hi there, Kajsa-Lisa. It's great to have you with us.
Hi, thank you.
Do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself, like one line of your role and responsibilities in your business, and then we'll start with some questions for you?
Yeah, I'm Kajsa-Lisa Ljudén. I'm the head of sustainability at Löfbergs in Sweden.
Fantastic. It's great to have you join us. Maybe you can start by just explaining to me and all the listeners, why is water important for you, and what does this mean for Löfbergs?
Yeah, water is of course essential and something you might take for granted when there's no lack of it. I live in Karlstad, Sweden, by Vänern, Sweden's biggest lake, with clean, fresh water And I feel really grateful for that. And I try to be mindful of my water usage. My mother taught me that when I was very young, that you don't waste water. And that has stayed with me. And I try to teach my kids that. And water is essential for Löfbergs as well as an important part of the ecosystem. All life on Earth requires well-functioning ecosystems, and it depends on a stable climate, a rich biodiversity, and access to clean, fresh water and clean air. And I think you visualize that very well, Ruth, with the wedding cake model, where the biosphere with water is the foundation of everything, because there can be no business or anything on a dead planet.
Agreed, thank you. So I was just trying to turn my light back on. I'd obviously not moved enough in my room, so it went off. So can you bring that to life a bit for how that works with Löfbergs and how you define sustainability at Löfbergs and what priority has across the organization?
Yeah, Löfbergs is a family-owned company now in 4th generation, and the family values and the long-term perspective is in our DNA, I would say. And accountability in everything we do has always been important. And I think the Löfbergs family successfully has engaged all employees in that feeling like we're a part of something bigger. And sustainability for us is about that, like being accountable, making sure that our actions doesn't take away the future generations' possibilities to have thriving lives. And our definition of sustainability is nothing else than making sure that there is a balance between social, environmental, and economic factors. We love doing good, profitable business that makes it better for both people and planet. And we strive for having sustainability in the center of everything we do. We don't have a sustainability department that works with sustainability. Like, everybody has a responsibility to work with it. The head of sustainability is leading the strategy and coordinate much of the group's work, but everyone is working with sustainability in different internal forums, for example, but also in relationship with our customers and in the sourcing of coffee, in production with waste management and the handling of certified raw materials and so on, both on employee and management level.
That's great. It's really exciting to hear about, sometimes a smaller company is more adaptable and be able to, as you say, everybody lives and breathes the sustainability motto. And that's sometimes some of the benefits of starting from a family-owned company. So it's great to hear it. Everybody lives and breathes the sustainability motto. Yeah. So can you explain a little bit more about the sustainability priorities of the business and how they fit in?
Yeah, and I have a slide here with our framework for it. I think it's coming up here. Yeah, we frame our sustainability work in 3 focus areas: circular, fair, and inclusive. And it's our roadmap to 2030. Circular is our ambition on becoming a circular, fossil-free business, generating 0 waste. And here we have goals connected to climate emissions, packaging materials, and food waste, for example. And what's exciting here is that we have set new goals for CO2 emissions in our entire value chain, and not just our own direct emissions. And this is exciting because it will require new cooperations and probably business models. And fair is our ambition on a fair, performance-driven and transparent value chain. And here we have goals regarding certified coffee and the development projects that we are involved in through the International Coffee Partners. And inclusive is our ambition on becoming a fully diverse and inclusive business. And here we have goals regarding diversity in our organization, but also for how we are dividing sponsorship money between men and women, for example, because we need to be a reflection of the markets that we operate on to be able to make smart and relevant decisions for our future. And in the bottom, with being game changers, it's not a focus area, but more of a way to do it. Because to be able to make a real change, we have to be both brave and quite innovative. Because we don't have all the answers and we don't know exactly how to reach all of our goals yet, but we know from experience that with high ambitions and goals, we tend to find ways to reach them. And in the top in this slide is our values: together, inclusive, accountable, and enterprisers. That's the foundation of all sustainability work that we do, because they guide us and remind us who we want to be and what we believe in. And when it comes to priorities, we are 300 people in the group in the Nordic and are sourcing coffee from thousands and thousands of farmers in coffee producing countries, which are all high-risk countries when it comes to human rights. So if we look at where we can have the greatest impact on both people and planet, I would say that the heaviest part of our sustainability work is absolutely our due diligence on human rights in our value chain.
Sounds like you're a busy woman, Kajsa-Lisa, chatting through these different 3 areas.
Yeah.
So how do you try and bring these 3 kind of pillars to life at the general level? across the organization?
Yeah, social responsibility. Like I said, it's integrated in our entire business. It's everything in our supplier relationship, in our due diligence work in the supply chain, and taking responsibility for our suppliers. But also, for example, that we are always paying taxes in the country where the revenues are obtained, and that we have an internal code of conduct and anonymous whistleblowing system, and that we are actively trying to build a more inclusive workplace. So social responsibility for us is both about us as a business, but also what kind of a voice in society we want to be and what kind of corporations we want to support. So we have a lot of focus now on the internal culture at Löfbergs. We want to build an inclusive culture, as I said, and where all employees have great knowledge and pride in the sustainability work that we do, because I think that will make us stronger as a business.
Yeah, I agree. That's quite inspiring to hear you talking about all of it.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good business to work with.
Yeah.
So how does this trickle down? How does all this kind of good ethos at the kind of headquarter function trickle down to the supply chain work, on the ground? How does it actually work in reality?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, where we can have the greatest impact is in our supply chain work and the sourcing of coffee. And we have a code of conduct for suppliers and a management system with policies governing our purchases. And we are conducting risk assessments based on, for example, country or region risks. And then we look at what factors are mitigating the risks, for example, certifications such as Rainforest Alliance, Fairtrade, and Organic. And what helps us here is our long experience of sourcing coffee, because we are 116 years old, and we buy coffee direct from origin and trying to minimize the middlemen. And with some farmers and cooperatives, we have relationships that stretches over generations. And also one important part is that our purchasers are traveling a lot, visiting coffee farmers to evaluate and do follow-up. So we really have a good understanding of challenges and types of risks and possibilities in the coffee sector and in different regions. And I talk a lot about certifications, and our purchasers see with their own eyes what big difference the certifications does, both for the ecosystems and for people's livelihoods.
Yeah. I'm just going to carry on asking you questions, to be honest, Kajsa-Lisa, because I've got lots of questions, but I would also invite anybody from the audience to submit any questions on the chat function, and we can use them too. But just reflecting on the certification and standards piece, I mean, you're right, that's a really good way of first of all providing a useful framework for driving change, but also enabling the subsistence farmers to see the changes. So we actually did some analysis across the different standards for the different sectors a little while ago to understand where WASH features in each of those standards. And I mean, the research, there wasn't a lot of WASH elements within the standards, to be honest, but Rainforest Alliance actually did feature some of the WASH elements within the standard, which is great. And another really good one was the Alliance for Water Stewardship. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but that's also, for people on the line to also hear as well, that's a really good global standard that understands all the different range of environmental and social and water issues that need to be considered by a company. And WASH is a central component of those considerations within the standard. So the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard is a global standard, but sites can be certified. So the whole company may not be AWS certified, but a site may be certified. So maybe I'm just going to expand a little bit on that certification question with the Rainforest Alliance. So that's something that some of your coffee growers have been working with, is it? And have you got reflections on whether that was easy or challenging or anything?
Yeah, I think we have seen really good results, because both Rainforest Alliance and the organic certification is very strict with water management and try to reduce the use of water in the agriculture so it doesn't interfere with meeting people's need for sanitation and hygiene. Okay. And there's also a focus on low-cost solutions such as rainwater harvesting and providing with buffer zones and wastewater treatments around coffee washing stations. Because coffee is not a dirty process, but one of the methods that you can use to thresh the pulp from the coffee berry is to wash it, which of course consumes water, but also produces an acidic wastewater, which can affect the environment downstreams if you don't treat it. And Rainforest is also working with deforestation issues, which affects the water in the local areas.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't know those nuances of the coffee supply chain.
Yeah.
So maybe you can expand a little bit. You touched on just a little bit there, actually. Can you expand a bit on some of the water priorities in the strategy, and then also some of the countries that you source from that may be water scarce, and how you understand those risks and what you think you might be doing about them to manage those water risks?
Yeah. The SDG 6 is clearly in focus in our strategy, as you saw in the focus area fair. And water management is something that our purchasers always look at when visiting farmers, since it's a part of our code of conduct. And coffee is growing at high altitude around the equator, and we source coffee from about 20 countries, and the majority in volume comes from South America. And it differs a bit. In some regions, water scarcity is not a big problem. For example, in the highlands of both South America and parts of Africa, if there has been no deforestation. But in lowlands, in, for example, Brazil, they are dependent on irrigation, and they have been severely exposed to climate change with, for example, drought. And deforestation is contributing further to this. So I would say that the climate change issue is absolutely a water issue as well.
Yeah.
That we're focusing on. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. It's an area at WaterAid that we're really pivoting towards, climate resilient wash solutions. Every company is now really attuned to climate resilient anything. So climate resilient wash solutions is a really nice thing to do, because it helps companies tick two boxes, being climate resilient, but also being sustainable and long-term in their wash solutions. And also I wanted to pick up on a point you made there about high altitudes. So I can reflect on a project we've been working with Twinings in Darjeeling. And I mean, the altitude that they're working at is really tricky, but also the terrain of the land is really difficult as well. So trying to do pipe work for taps and toilets in that terrain has been really challenging. And also we had the monsoon periods as well, which caused chaos in trying to do the hardware interventions of the taps and toilets in those environments. So, it's all very easy for us as WaterAid to say, in theory, these are all the things that companies should and could be doing. But I'm very aware about the practical challenges in some of these high terrain environments or high altitude. The practical implementation of these wash technologies or infrastructure can be really challenging. So it was good to hear you highlight also some of the challenges that you've been having with high altitudes and things like that. Okay, so maybe you can talk through some of the challenges of taking social responsibility in the supply chain. Why is it important to work with these sort of issues?
I would say it's essential, fundamental to work with these issues. As you said earlier, it's about human rights, and we can, of course, never neglect that. And I think, especially when you're operating in high-risk countries, and I think and hope it will be impossible in the future to run a business without taking responsibility in your supply chain. And demands from consumers, customers, and regulations will only go up from now on. And I hope that the 2020s will be a decade of cooperations and partnerships, because to reach the 17 goals in the Agenda 2030, all partners in all value chains need to cooperate and be innovative together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you had great examples on, because we need to show businesses on how to make money out of it by doing good, because that has to be the driving force, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And another really exciting area that I think more and more companies are warming up to is the idea of not just working as a solo, as one company. In a water stressed or water risk area, if you're sourcing from the same smallholder farmers as maybe your counterpart, it's not about being in competition, it's about working together and potentially doing some collective action is the new hot topic for companies to be working together, pooling resources, pooling funding, driving bigger results through a collective approach. As we all know that corporate budgets are going down for sustainability. So let's pool our budgets together and maybe do more collective action working together.
Yeah.
It can be a scary thing for companies working together more, especially if they're in competition, but there can be some really nice results coming out. Yeah,
we've been doing that for 20 years, actually, with the International Coffee Partners. It's a non-profit organization and non-competitive with other family-owned coffee roasters.
A fantastic example,
yeah.
Really nice. See, we need more of those type of things.
Yeah, because we can change the coffee sector together if we all have the same interest. We want to have coffee in the future as well.
Yeah. And you need to maintain the land and keep the farmers happy. And I agree. All those things. So this brings us on to another really nice question then. So how do we ensure that the responsibility of the farmers is well taken, throughout the supply chain? How do you work with your smallholder farmers? And we kind of started touching on that, so it'd be great if you can expand on it a bit more.
Yeah, because I would say that by buying direct from origin and our long-term relationships with suppliers and our thorough risk assessments, and with the purchasers traveling and visiting the farmers and the third-party audits by certification bodies, I think we are mitigating much of the risks, but we can of course always do more. And I just wanted to tell you real quick about Era of We. Martin Löfberg, my colleague and one of the owner of the company, created the platform Era of We, which Löfbergs now has joined as a roaster. And the purpose of this digital platform is to modernize the value chain and empower the farmers. So the Era of We farmers can build their own brand, set the price for their product and sell it on the platform. And the platform is fully transparent and connects all actors in the value chain, from farmers to consumers. And I think the transparency and the direct contact with the farmer is something that benefits everyone. And both the platform and the community connected to it is open for everyone. So I think you should really check it out. And that will make it easy. The direct contact with the farmer, you could ask about the wash situation or the water management. How are they working with it? So it's an automatic translation of languages when you chat with the farmers. So it's
nice.
Really
What's it called again?
Era of We.
Era of We.
ERA of WE.
Nice. We'll have to, maybe you can share the link in a little bit for all the participants. That sounds like a really, really good collaborative platform. And there's more and more of these types of things coming out at the moment. Everybody in their wisdom thinks, I've got a solution for these challenges. So that there's, platforms being built. And there's also a really good resource on that UN CEO Water Mandate have developed, called the Water Action Hub, which is a fantastic resource that people on the line can have a look at, and I'll also share the link in a minute. But it also it's a global database basically, where every single company is able to upload projects or programs, not just on WASH, but on water or environmental stuff. And companies can have a look and see, maybe in the same river basin, that they can see another company is working on XYZ project, and they can be in contact, and there's contact details for that company as well. So you can really go and learn about what other companies are doing through the Water Action Hub. So I'll also share that. It sounds like your resource is good. There's loads of cool things going on that we should all be tapping into. Yeah,
we have so much to learn from each other. We don't have to do it ourselves.
Exactly, you're quite right. Yeah. So how do you see? We've talked a little bit about the WASH issue and the water sanitation hygiene piece. How do you see a company like Löfbergs kind of moving more or doing more in the WASH space? And do you see any of the things we've talked about in this discussion as being relevant for you guys and your company?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could and should focus more on WASH, absolutely. And I think what a good step to start with is to do a better job raising the issue and communicating more about it, raising awareness. Because I think generally now in the media, it is mostly about the climate and a little bit about biodiversity, but I think we need to have a holistic view and understand how the climate change is affecting both biodiversity and access to water, which in turn affects our resilience to the climate change, and that it is all tightly connected to human rights and people's well-being. So that's what I want to do now after this meeting, to raise more awareness, both internally and externally.
I think sometimes the lingo doesn't always help. So WASH, people say, what is WASH? What does that even stand for? So I think unpacking it, and WaterAid and others need to do a better job of doing that type of thing and making it really clear and simple how WASH intersects with the business and how it intersects with the different stages of each company's supply chain. So yeah, I think that's something that we need to do better at as well internally, about the awareness raising and trying to unpack it for different sectors. So, if you need any help with unpacking that internally with you guys, then WaterAid be happy to help, be a champion of the awareness piece anyway.
Yeah,
for sure.
I love that.
So I wonder if there are any other questions that have come in from any of the audience on the line. Happy to answer any questions from WaterAid perspective, and I'm sure Kajsa-Lisa can talk a bit more from a company perspective. But we really welcome any other additional comments that people might have. I can maybe
sorry, I was just thinking, Ruth, if there's a company here excited to start working with WASH, what's the first thing that they should do after this meeting?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Turn it back on them, Kajsa-Lisa. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Is it just the contact WaterAid, or what should you do as a company?
So I thought you were asking people on the line to tell
I'm
us what
sorry,
they were going to do. You're asking me,
no.
sorry.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
asking you. Yeah.
I'm very happy to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if a company is first of all trying to understand why WASH is relevant for their business, you know, anybody at WaterAid would be really happy to have a conversation with that individual and unpack where WASH intersects in their business and supply chain. Every company is so completely different. So it's really interesting to start, you know, it's a journey, it's an understanding journey for us as WaterAids to understand your business. You know, me just talking to you for like the last 20 minutes, I understand a lot more about your business now and some of the hot topics for you. Yeah. And so it helps me to understand where WASH intersects with your business. And then we can start thinking, and then my next steps would be understand each other, get to know where the WASH issues are relevant, then make a plan for raising awareness, as you said, to help you build the business case internally to your colleagues why WASH is important. That's also one of the next steps. And then there are lots of different avenues that a company can take in terms of, you know, doing a brand awareness piece, internal campaigns with employee engagement piece, country program, priority programs. So in a supply chain element where there's a WASH issue, WaterAid can work with that company to help understand the WASH issues and help manage those WASH issues. And one of the mantras I always talk about is it's really crucial to be doing WASH, first of all, as a holistic approach, the taps, toilets, and the hygiene. You can't just do taps without teaching people the importance of drinking clean water. So you need that three-pronged approach. And then the other piece of the puzzle for me is doing it in 3 different environments. So we need to invest in WASH in the workplace, so in that controlled environment, taps and toilets and hygiene in the workplace, in the communities where the workers are living, because you may spend loads of money as a company investing in your workers, but if they go home and they don't have taps and toilets at home, they'll still be ill and they won't come to work the next day. Yeah. So that piece, and also the community. So you need to be building an environment around your workplace that has that sustainability and the supply chain piece as well, WASH in the supply chain. So those are my 2 mantras, doing a holistic WASH approach, taps, toilets and hygiene, but also in the workplace, the communities and the supply chain. So I mean, there's, you know, I could go on talking for ages to that question, yeah. Kajsa-Lisa. There's so many different things, and it's got to be tailor-made by the company and the partnership and the opportunities that are in place. I think that would be my next step. It's
inspiring to listen to you, so that's great. Yeah.
Okay, so as we've been talking, I don't think any other kind of burning questions have come through, but I don't think that should stop anybody. You know, if you come away from this webinar and you want to ask Kajsa-Lisa a question or myself, you know, just contact the WaterAid Sweden team and we can get back in touch with you and share any feedback or ideas and respond to your questions. And also, I'm speaking on your behalf, Kajsa-Lisa, but I'm sure you'd be happy to have more discussions on this with colleagues if they approach.
Absolutely, yeah. It's okay to contact me afterwards.
Great. Okay, so Kajsa-Lisa, unless you've got any other burning thoughts or reflections that you had from this, I was just going to wrap up with a few key highlights from me. Does anything come to your mind with alarm bells of, oh, that's really exciting?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can choose something now on top of my mind. You go ahead.
The awareness piece. One of the things
that's the thing I was going to take with me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was going to be one of my takeaways as well. I mean, the awareness. So I kind of got 2 main takeaways, I guess. Well, I'll do 3. I think the first one is the awareness. So WASH is a tricky concept. Well, some people think it's tricky, but it's not actually as tricky when you talk it through. So I think the awareness raising and unpacking what the issue is, you know, is something that WaterAid can help a business do, and we can also help doing that internal capacity awareness and raising with your employees. So the awareness raising is one. The collective action thing, I was really excited by that example you shared, Kajsa-Lisa, about R of we, and also I probably said that slightly wrongly, but that one, so maybe you can share the link, but also the idea that we could do more together, working together in a non-competitive way, but pooling resources, pooling opportunities. So I think that's a really exciting thing to explore as companies. And then finally, I think, you know, if this is a topic of interest, then please reach out to WaterAid or colleagues on this topic, and we can help unpack the issues in a bit more detail. So I would like to finish by a huge thank you to Kajsa-Lisa for taking your time out to share with us kind of all your wealth of experience and the exciting ideas that you're taking your organisation in the direction of. It sounds like you're going to be busy, but it's really inspiring to hear what the direction is you've set. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
And thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And thanks everybody for joining. Thanks wherever you are in the world, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Kajsa-Lisa. Bye.